So even though the 2028 presidential elections feel so far away, I mean, Trump hasn't even been in office for a year yet, it does seem like DC is really buzzing about who might be up next after last week's elections.
Yeah, and we made social videos on Instagram and TikTok about, for the Dems and the Republicans, who is the most likely candidates and who most voters want to run. And both of those did really well. We got so much engagement, so many comments. People feel very strongly about who they want for 2028.
And so from last week's elections, the big takeaway for the Republicans really were that, I mean, they really underperformed, and it kind of led to two major concerns within the party. So the first is that, without having Trump on the ticket, can Republican voters feel like excited enough to vote? And then second, the results kind of show how dissatisfied people across the country are feeling right now. Trump is leading the country. He has the House, he has the Senate, he has the Supreme Court. And he's been in power for like 11 months. He can't really keep blaming Biden like he used to for like the border and the economy. It's all under his control. And the government shutdown, that was the longest shutdown in history. So people are dissatisfied and there's no one really to blame but Trump and the Republicans.
Yeah, it feels like the tides are turning because of the blue wave. And then after that, people are making predictions like James Carville, who's a really well-known political strategist who ran Clinton's campaign, came out and said he would bet money that Democrats will take the White House in 2028. And then Steve Bannon made the weirdest comment over the weekend. He, of course, is Trump's chief strategist and is still a huge MAGA activist. And he said to a group of conservatives, if Republicans lose the midterms in 2028, some of us in this room are going to prison, myself included.
What does that mean? Is he admitting to something?
Yeah, I think he means because Democrats are going to come after us and target us. But it still is okay, why would you say it?
So we can get into the conversation of who would be on this hypothetical ticket, at least for the Republicans. And obviously this is contingent on the primaries, but ever since last week, there have been a lot of rumors about what this ticket could look like. And it seems like a Vance Rubio ticket is very, very likely, which makes sense. I mean, Trump has been suggesting that the two run together for a while. They're both young. Everyone in the party really, really likes them. And apparently they're really good friends. They used to be in the Senate together. And apparently they would get lunch all the time and talk about movies.
I can see that. They also both seem kind of like the adult in the room a lot of the time with the Republican shenanigans.
No, it's true. And that's probably why they get along. So far, there hasn't been really a need to discuss, who would be the president on the ticket, who would be the VP. It's so early. But reporting last week has shown that Rubio has been going around telling his best friends that Vance is probably going to be the presidential nominee on the ticket. So he's already kind of taking a backseat, which we even discussed. We were kind of thinking, why is Rubio so MIA these days?
Well, maybe if he sees himself as the VP nominee, it's just helping him to try to push Vance on everyone. It's Vance, you guys, don't even question it, because he knows it's also helping himself.
Yeah, I mean, Vance is definitely the most popular choice as of now within the administration, and even Trump voters think that. So there was a political poll that came out a couple of weeks ago asking Trump voters who they wanted to see run in 2028. And Vance was the leading favorite with 35%.
That's a lot.
And I can see why Trumpers really like him. He seems really aligned with Trump and they seem really close, unlike Mike Pence, rip. And even though most VPs do take a backseat, especially the VPs of Trump, who is the center star, takes up all the oxygen in the room, Vance has managed to also be in the spotlight during this past 11 months.
Well, not always in the best light, RIP to the Pope.
It does seem though the position that he's taking is as Trump's kind of attack dog when it comes to redistricting and the government shutdown. As we've seen, he's been aggressively trolling Democrats on social media. He's going on all the talk shows, really explaining Trump's agenda to people. And it seems from JD Vance's point of view, this is all working in his favor because it just shows Trump voters how aligned he is with Trump. When it comes time for him to run, there will seem there's no other choice except to vote for him because he seems like Trump's heir. And it's been fun to zoom in on what Vance actually does because he seems like a very mysterious figure that's always there in the room. But what does he actually believe? What does he actually push for? And interestingly, he hasn't been segregated to one issue the way past vice presidents have been. Usually they're given a very specific issue or portfolio to tackle. He said that Vice President Kamala Harris kind of served as a cautionary tale. She was given, the border. And because of that, she was kind of shunted out of a lot of other really important conversations. And so for Vance, it seems like the most important thing is to be in the room where it happens. And he has been. He's been not the most vocal, but White House aides have said every important meeting, Vance is right behind Trump. He's basically his shadow there. But it seems like by taking Trump's side and everything, he has had to flip-flop a lot on his own positions. Like, for example, one of Vance's biggest stances was to show military restraint, which a lot of Republicans appreciated. And he didn't want the U.S. to get involved in global conflict, open-ended conflict, non-identified missions. That was something that he really stood for. But obviously, that's not what's been happening during this administration. Trump is involved in everything from Thailand to Gaza to Russia. And Vance has had to be along for the ride.
Yeah, and really defend it.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously the vice president does have to like take the side of the president, but critics have really pointed out that he hasn't done anything to sway Trump the other way, with Trump bombing Iran over the summer to the bombing of, alleged smugglers on the Venezuelan coast. Vance is just fully supporting it. And I think that will come to haunt him when it comes time for him to run, because there is just so much back and forth about what he's saying. Epstein, freedom of speech, there's a lot.
Yeah, it's really going to come down to, and this is what Kamala faced to, how popular is the president?
Yeah.
Because if Trump is popular, then Vance gets to be a part of that win. But if Trump isn't popular, then he goes down for Trump's missteps. And one of the turning points in Kamala Harris's campaign that people point to is when she was on The View and she was asked, is there anything that you would have done differently from Biden? And she said, I can't think of anything. And so if Vance is asked that question, it's going to be interesting to see if he will list things or if he just wants to be so united that he won't.
Yeah, I mean, that is a tricky game to play. You need to be so aligned with the president to get his voters, to get his support, to have his backing, but also keep enough distance so that you can carve your own path. And it doesn't really seem like Vance has done that. And people will also probably hold against him. Remember, in his book, he called Trump the American Hitler and was super against Trump until clearly he found an opportunity. Now he's his vice president, his puppet. And so going back to the rest of the political poll about, who Trump voters would want to see on this ticket, 35% said Vance, 16% said that they don't know, they don't care. Only 2% named Rubio, which is really, really low.
Yikes.
Yeah. 2% named Nikki Haley. Ted Cruz even got 1%, which is crazy. And then everyone else, Mike Pence, RFK Jr., Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, all these losers didn't even hit 1%.
Well, I know she's not on the list, but Marjorie Taylor Greene is going viral because people think she might be positioning herself to run in 2028 because she's kind of on this redemption tour, and everyone is like, is she making sense? She called Pelosi's career incredible. She criticized her own party for not having a healthcare plan. She's been one of the only prominent Republicans to call what happened in Gaza a genocide. So she's definitely up to something. I don't know if it's 2028, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I can't believe we're thinking that Marjorie Taylor Greene might be moderate. I never thought we'd ever think that.
No.
And then if you're wondering what the other 28% of voters voted for in this poll, 28% said that Trump should run again, which is weird.
But they're kind of following Trump's lead because he has been teasing another presidential run. He said in interviews there are methods for him to serve a third term. Bannon has been saying in interviews there's a plan in place. Trump's even been selling merch, 2028 merch, that interestingly also feature the phrase rewrite the rules. So that might hint in the direction of how they think they're going to pull this off.
That's insane.
So today we thought we would break down what is this alleged loophole that Trump supporters think they've found and whether it's legally sound. So just to lay the foundation, the 22nd Amendment says, quote, no person shall be elected to the office of president more than twice. So if we wanted to change the Constitution, it would require 2/3 approval from the Senate and the House and 75% of state governments. So Republicans don't have anywhere near those numbers. But then if you're asking, well, couldn't the Supreme Court just strike down this amendment the same way Trump is asking them to strike down birthright citizenship? Well, it turns out, we looked into this, birthright citizenship is only vulnerable because there's some ambiguity in the language. So that amendment says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. So what subject to the jurisdiction thereof means has been historically debated, and the current interpretation is that that applies to the children of undocumented immigrants. And we currently exclude children of foreign diplomats because they have diplomatic immunity and they only have to abide by the laws in their home country. So we are already doing some selective application. So that's why that one is way more vulnerable, whereas 22nd Amendment, super cut and dry, no ambiguity. You cannot serve more than 2 terms.
Well, that's reassuring, but what is this potential loophole then?
The 22nd Amendment only bans someone from being elected. It says nothing of succession. So Vance runs as president, Trump runs as VP. They are sworn in day one. Vance resigns. Trump ascends to the presidency again.
So Trump can be VP.
Well, this is where the loophole comes in. So the 12th Amendment says no one who is constitutionally ineligible to be president can be vice president. So based on what we know about the 22nd Amendment, Trump would be ineligible to be VP. And every credible constitutional scholar has said that is what shuts this succession loophole down. But there is also an argument to be made that the 12th Amendment only refers to the presidential eligibility requirements that are laid out in Article 2 of the Constitution. And all those are age, citizenship, and residency. Because when the 12th Amendment was written, there was no 22nd Amendment. That didn't come for 150 years later until after FDR when we wanted to put term limits on. So it's never been tried in court, obviously, because no president has ever tried to get around serving more than 2 terms.
It's just confusing to me. I don't know how you can use one amendment to like disqualify the other. You have to take them all together. How can they just be like, well, it says this in the 12th. Let's just totally ignore the 22nd that says specifically that this is not allowed.
Right. Currently, the Constitution says you cannot serve more than 2 terms. So that now adds an eligibility requirement to the list. Plus, for more reassurance, the Supreme Court in the past has ruled you can't use clever tricks to try to like end run the Constitution because it's so clear what the intention of the 22nd Amendment was,
right,
that they would look more at like you're violating the purpose of this amendment more like than how did you do it. And keep in mind, Trump will be 82 years old. Like, is he even going to be physically capable of running at that age? He's already the oldest president.
And Trump cannot run a third term. You heard it here first on Newsgirls. So we spent a lot of time obviously going over what the Republicans' strategy is, what is their plan for 2028. So now we're going to go through the Dems' 2028 plan because that's a lot more open-ended.
So there was also a pretty surprising poll that came out that asked Democratic voters who they would want to run. And the top choice was Pete Buttigieg. And we have really not seen a lot of him.
No, where is he?
We talked about him on the show when Kamala's book came out, and she said he was my first choice for VP, but America wasn't ready for a Black woman and a gay vice president. And he did respond to that saying, like, he gives Americans more credit, which I'm sure if he's eyeing a presidential run, he's like, let's change that narrative. Like, please. And we got so many comments of people who love him. Like, he definitely has the most support on our video. But then there's also a side that was like, he's a establishment moderate. They called him out for not congratulating Mamdani last week.
Oh.
Then second, obviously, Newsom. Seems like a shoo-in. He's not even pretending anymore. He's saying, yes, I'm thinking of running in 2028. He had that huge win last week with the redistricting California. And then third on the list was really surprising to us, AOC. I get that she has so much support, but because she's such a polarizing figure, even within the Democrats, can she even win a primary? And when we made our video last week breaking down these results, we said, let's watch what happens in New York to see how voters respond to a Democratic socialist. Well, since then, The Independent just published an article titled, Zohran Mamdani has paved the way for an AOC run for president.
But that's really interesting to me because I heard a Zohran interview where they asked him, would you support AOC running for president? And he like declined to answer.
Safe strategically, I guess.
But he's like a part of the same party. So I don't know why.
He's also really close to Bernie, who is also on this list.
Is he going to run?
Well, he would be 87 when he was sworn in. I do think
it's
people are just going to be like, you're too old, dude.
Yeah.
And then Kamala is also on the list, of course, and she declined to run for California governor. And now she's finally saying, yes, I'm thinking of running in 2028. And she was asked whether she could still be the first woman president. And she said, possibly. And then the rest of the list is pretty much well-known governors, Whitmer, Beshear, Pritzker, Shapiro, Wes Moore. And a lot of those are popular Democrats in purple or even red states in Beshear's case. So that's a huge asset. And ABC News has been tracking like early campaigning that's already underway. And so many of these contenders have just been doing like rallies and events in battleground states. So the election has absolutely already started.
I mean, 2028 is going to be crazy. I mean, it's the first time in 12 years that an incumbent isn't running.
Well, maybe.
Whatever administration, Republican, Democrat, comes in is really going to set the tone for what the country could look like for the next decade, possibly. And it'll be the first time in a while that the conversation doesn't totally revolve around Trump. And it's interesting how, I mean, through this discussion, seeing how the two parties have such opposite problems, because on one hand, you have a party that's changed so much into just revolving around this one guy. Trump is the sun, and all of these Republicans are like the solar system kind of revolving around him. And so what will, you know, the next phase of the Republican Party look like without him? Whereas the Democratic Party, there's this power vacuum just looking for a charismatic leader to unite everybody. So it's interesting to kind of see how different these two parties, the different positions that they're in leading up to 2028.